The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. My name is Courtney Pollock, and I'm the Marketing Coordinator for SWK Technologies. I'd like to welcome you to our webinar, Payroll Year-End and 1099 Processing Procedures in Sage 100 Workshop, presented by Monica Byrne of SWK Technologies. A little housekeeping before we get started. Everyone has been placed on mute to keep the background noise to a minimum. However, throughout the webinar, you can submit any questions you have. If you'd like to submit a question, look for the questions section in your GoToWebinar, and we will answer all your questions at the end of the presentation. We are also recording this presentation, and it will be distributed tomorrow to all attendees, as well as those who registered but were not able to attend. And finally, please take a moment towards the end of our presentation to answer the survey question. With that said, we appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to attend this webinar. We're here to help you get the most out of your software solutions and help you find an easier way to run your business by providing you tools, support, software, and industry knowledge whenever you need it. So whether you're here researching a new solution or you're just here to learn, we'd like to encourage you to ask any questions you have. And lastly, as a quick reminder, SWK is constantly sharing important updates and software tips and tricks on our social media channels. We encourage you to follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. With that said, I'll hand it over to Monica.
Hi, everyone. As Courtney mentioned, my name is Monica Byrne. I'm a senior consultant here at SWK for the Sage 100 product line. I've been supporting clients with the Sage 100 product for over 15 years now, doing things like upgrades, trainings, adding new features, and those kinds of things. Today, we're here to talk about year-end payroll and 1099 processing in Sage 100. I know it's probably not the most exciting topic. However, Sage continually makes improvements to make it easier for you. And that's really the exciting part, right, is they're constantly improving the software so that it's easier for you. When I first started working with Sage 100, the payroll was really archaic. There was a lot of maintenance required for tax tables and rates, and sometimes key tax updates were not available until the following quarter. And additionally, the printing of forms, such as W-2s and 941s, used to be a nightmare. You used to have to print on the form that was already pre-printed with lines, and it was difficult to get everything to fall in the appropriate boxes. So things have improved greatly. So today I'm looking at payroll, and starting with payroll 2.20, all of that's changed. Now we have easier tax rates and tax updates. They're pushed out to the software automatically. W-2s and 941s are printed through a program called Atrix, which we're going to look at in a little bit, and that has greatly improved that kind of printing in Sage 100 as well. It's important to note that you should be on, in order to get the latest and greatest tax updates, the W-2s and the 1099s, it's important to be on a supported version of Sage 100, as well as Payroll 2.20 or greater. So this one that I'm working on today, this system is Sage 100 version 2021, and the payroll is 2.21 something, one of the latest payroll updates that are out there. Okay, so Sage 100, I'm going to give you just a little bit of the background on how processing is happening in Sage 100 before I dive into the software and show you some things. You might not know this, you might know that it's all happening in the background, but just to give you a little more detail. Sage 100 now uses something called SPA, or Sage Payroll Calculation Engine. This works in conjunction with Sage Payroll Compliance Data, or CLAD. And CLAD incorporates the tax rates limits and tax calculation rules for the United States. So simply, these two items take data from Sage 100 and calculate your payroll taxes. It's key to note the data it uses has no personally identifiable information and contains everything the payroll engine needs to completely calculate the taxes for the current pay run. So the information provided to the payroll engine service, called a payload, is mostly a series of codes and numbers to identify and calculate all that tax data necessary to calculate your payroll. So it is important to know, even though there's this tax engine being used, none of your personally identifiable information, such as names, social security numbers, birth dates, anything like that, is being transmitted through that engine. So although the tax rates, rules, and all of that are housed in the engine, you will receive automatic payroll tax updates now in Sage, so you've probably seen those. This updates the structure and tables needed to cross-reference the information between Sage 100 and that SPA engine. Essentially what happens is the Sage 100 system asks SPA if anything has changed, such as does Massachusetts have a new filing status, or did a new tax get added to a county in Kentucky? If the answer is yes, the Sage 100 payroll user will receive a message that a payroll tax update is available. So this can simply mean there was a new tax added, or maybe even removed, or a new filing status. It even could be in states that don't affect you. So as such, it might not result in a change for your company specifically, but we do recommend keeping these updates current. The functionality is so much better and more timely than the prior quarterly and year updates that we used to have. So when running a payroll, if prompted to install an update, you can review the update and determine if you need to install it prior to your payroll. It can be updated later if desired. So I left my payroll update outstanding just so I could run through that quickly. Probably most of you have seen this, but just in case you have not. Under Utilities, there's something called Payroll Tax Update and Payroll Tax Update Report. Now, if I have an outstanding payroll tax update, when I go into things such as employee maintenance or payroll data entry, it's going to prompt me and ask me if I want to update Sage 100 or I want to update the payroll. And then when I go into this payroll tax update, it'll say click to proceed to download the install the latest update, pending changes, and then we can force it. Now, forcing just means that we want to update even though entry is in progress. Not really a great thing to do, but you can do it if you have to. I'm going to go to the payroll tax update report just to show you something before I add the update. So it'll tell me a payroll, this is another thing, it's going to tell me a payroll tax update is available for download. Do you want to download the update now? I'm going to say yes, and it's going to download it. Now there's two pieces to the payroll tax update, the downloading of it and the installing of it. So right now we're downloading it. I wanted to show you the payroll tax update report because before you install the update, you can see what the update is going to contain. So you can actually see if it's going to affect you or not. And it may be, I don't know, it's still downloading it for me. Let's just give this 1 second to go through. Must be a big one. Big payroll tax update. And just in case you don't know what payroll version you're on right now, I'll just show you that real quick while we're waiting for that to go. If you go to Help and About Sage 100, you'll always see your version of Sage 100, and then your payroll version will be to the right of it. So I'm on 2.21.3. And sometimes, you know, someone may ask you what version you're on of either or, and that's how you would be able to tell. So I'm going to go back. I think I finished, and I'm going to go. Oh no, it's still working on it. I want to go. Here we go. So what I want to see here is I can view a report to see my installed updates, and then if I have not installed an update yet, I can toggle this. It looks like it may have installed that one. So my updates to print is only installed updates. But you may see that you can toggle from installed updates to uninstalled updates to see that. So I'm going to preview this just so you get an idea of what it looks like and how you can utilize it. So I'm going to say no to install the update. And here, and we'll install it after. So here's the payroll tax update report. So it's just telling us in this tax group in Oregon, the filing statuses have changed. So you can kind of look through here and see what tax group is affected by that payroll tax update. And then you can determine if you need to install it before you do a payroll or after you do a payroll. If it's something that's affecting you, your state, your employees, you might want to do that payroll tax update prior to doing your payroll. But that's how you can find out, is by going to the utilities and payroll tax update. Now, I didn't wait for that to finish before, which is why I didn't have the pending updates before, but I just wanted to show you that you can see the pending updates and the installed updates. When you look at the installed updates, you can always see different ones in here that were applied. So you could choose any of these updates to review. So you can always get that information. Sage recommends running the payroll status check after you run a payroll tax update to see if anything changed that affects your employees. So that payroll status check runs through your setup of payroll and determines if you have any issues. So like here in my tax profile, I have errors in some of these states. I'm not going to go through and fix them right now, but I would want to go to my tax profiles and check those. I want to see okay or a warning. A warning doesn't necessarily mean something's wrong. I have GL accounts missing, but maybe it's not a tax that I apply. You know, like maybe it's unemployment and I don't have to apply that in this state. So this is a good tool to help you check all of that. So we're going to start getting into the year-end processing. And I just wanted to show you some resources that you have available to you on Sage's website. So this is Sage City. If you haven't been here before, go ahead and check it out. It's just www.sagecity.com. When you log into just sagecity.com, it'll ask you to choose the location that you're in, United States, and the product that you're working with. So you'd want to choose Sage 100 ERP. So I selected both of those things, which is why you see up here the sagecity.com/US/sage100_ERP. So you could put that address into your search or into your web browser as well. When you log into the Sage 100 group for the United States, this is what it looks like. Over on the right-hand side, I just want you to pay attention to the area that says Visit the Year-End Center. So I'm going to click Visit the Year-End Center, and just to show you what kind of resources are here. We're not going to go through each one of these today because of time, but I just wanted to show you that there's FAQs here about, you know, if you have to do ACA or if there's any COVID-19 legislation questions you have, you can go to these FAQs and look at those. It guides you to Sage University training classes. We also, as SWK, provide training classes, so you can reach out to your consultant if you didn't see anything that fit your needs there. And then checklists in the middle is what I wanted to show you today. So there are some payroll and AP year-end checklists. And then note on the right-hand side, there's some external resources as well. So Atrix deadlines, and you can go to the Internal Revenue Service from here, important dates with the IRS. So if you're looking for those filing dates and things like that, you could go there from here. So we're going to look at the year-end checklist. I guess we'll look at the payroll and AP 1099 year-end checklist. So you'll see here, this is kind of a walkthrough system. So I'm just going to say next here, and you'll see the steps on the left-hand side. So it's going to talk about the payroll workflow when I say next. So this is a nice little tool to give you an idea with payroll quarter and year-end processing, what you should be focusing on doing. So backing up payroll, I'm going to show you a little bit about that in a few minutes. Process payroll, process your last payroll, right? Print any reports, print your checks, all of that. Run your quarterly reports, reconcile them. And then you can go into your printing or e-filing of those forms. You can print your W-2s, perform your period end processing. You can make a copy of your company. We're going to look at that today, and update tax tables. So all of that can happen, and that's kind of a flow chart for payroll. If I click next, it'll talk to you about each step. So here's the quarterly payroll reports that Sage is suggesting that you look at. You don't have to look at all of them, of course, and you may have the several that you like to print for your year-end processing, and that's fine. It's just giving you an idea of what Sage recommends. And then you can see it. I'm not going to walk through the entire thing, but you can see it'll kind of tell you the next steps through here. So it's a good resource for you to get some information on year-end stuff with Sage 100. And they update this every year. For the past few years, it's been on Sage City. You can print these. So back when I was on the checklist, I think the very first one, you can print the checklist to help you. So I'm going to show you how to copy your company. And the reason I'm going to do that is because a lot of customers or clients of ours, we find, like to make a backup of that company after they print those W-2s before they do anything else, or they might make it at the year end and then print their W-2s from that test company. So it's totally up to you if you'd like to utilize this tool, but a lot of users don't know how to do it. So you would have to have access to Library Master Main, and you would go to company maintenance. And if I wanted to make a copy of my company, I'm working in this company that's called PR2. So I would create a new company code that would be my test or my backup company or my archive. So I'm going to call it P21. So this is our payroll backup, and you can label it appropriately of PR2 for 2021. This is new in Sage 100 2021, so if you don't have 2021 yet, you won't see this company type field. But the nice thing about this is I can label this company as an archive, and using security, I can prevent users from overwriting it ever. So I'll always have that archive, and that's a new feature in 2021. So I'm going to copy this by clicking the copy on the right-hand side. It'll say we have to save a record, yes, and then that we're going to not. It's a caution to not work with integrated modules. So this would be a concern if you had CRM, and it's really not even a concern any longer with CRM in the newer versions, but it's just kind of warning you of that integration. So my source company is going to be my PR2. You want to make sure your source company is always your live company, and your destination company is always your test company. I have had clients copy over their test company over their live company before, and it's very painful. So just make sure the source company is your source and the destination is that. And then you could choose, if you just wanted this to be a payroll backup, you have to include general ledger and common information, but I don't have to include accounts payable. So you can make that choice, and then you say proceed. It'll say, do you want to copy all these files? I'm saying yes, and it's going to make that copy. So that once that completes, I have an exact copy of my data, which is actually another company in Sage 100. So it'll be in my company list. I can go back to it in the future, anything like that. So I'm going to accept this company and close that. Kind of went big on me. Close that, and then you'll see if I go into my company list now that it'll be listed there. So here's my P21, which is my backup, and you'll see the nice comment and everything, so you know what it is. So now that's how I would make a backup. All right, so let's go forward from here. What do we do now? So you've printed your reports. What we want to focus on today is running the 1099s, W-2s, and those kinds of things. So in payroll, the 1099 or the 1099, the W-2 reporting is located under your period end processing menu. So you'll see it's called federal and state tax reporting. It's important for you to know that federal and state tax reporting is a link to another program called Atrix. I mentioned it a few minutes ago. That Atrix program is a third-party product. They're known for their tax products and tax reporting, so they're well known for that, and they're one of the largest in the industry that provide that kind of tax reporting. Previously, Sage used to do maintain their own tax tables, their W-2 forms and all of that, but it just got to be very overwhelming to maintain that kind of information, so they decided to move to a company that does that all the time. That's what they do. That's their whole entire business. So when you launch federal and state tax reporting, you're actually launching Atrix. And Atrix is a separate install on your workstation than the Sage 100 client. So if you launch this and there's some kind of error here, it's typically because that is not installed on your workstation, and you can contact us, SWK, the consultant you work with, whomever, to get that installed for you. When we go in here, you'll see we can print federal forms, we can print state forms, or we can just print some reporting. I'm going to focus on the federal forms today, and when I do a lookup, you'll see that I can print W-2s. So this says 2020, of course, because the 2021 forms are not released yet by the government, so they haven't been updated in Atrix yet. That usually happens sometime in December, usually mid-December. So I'm going to select that, and you'll see it'll give us some options, what year. I know we're in Q2, but this is just demo data. Are we tax exempt, etc. If none apply, you say none apply. All of this company information will come over from Sage 100 if you have it filled out in Library Master main company maintenance. So down here on the left-hand side, that's my address. One thing I wanted to note was this trade name. So this version, 2021, has the option to have a trade name so that you could have your actual company name show up as well as the trade name on your federal W-2s and your state, any reporting essentially. So I'm going to choose an employee number just for this purpose of showing you. I'm going to use this demo lady, and so that it runs quicker for the purpose of this demonstration. So I'm going to say proceed, and you'll see it's going to create some work files. So another thing that's important for you to know is that you can change things in the Atrix software. You could even change the amounts if you needed to of the W-2s or your 1099s when we look at those shortly. It looks like we have an update. I'll get back to that, but it looks like we have an update. So I'm going to say automatic update, and I'm going to apply that update. So that means that since the last time I ran this, Atrix updated the forms. So you'll see that happen when you go in there every year, because of course you haven't worked in there since last year, right? So that's important to note too. And back to the other thing, Atrix, I can change data in Atrix. And the reason for that, I guess, is so that on the fly, if you need to, especially when doing 1099s, you realize something's incorrect, you can change it. It does not go back and write that change to Sage. So that's really important to know. And then it'll tell us here with the update that we have some things that are out of date. So I'm just going to say next. And we're going to go ahead and let it apply this update. So this is not uncommon. You will see this every year because, of course, Atrix is updating forms every single year. So it'll just go through, and it's important to keep it updated, even if those states that you saw on the list were not states that you have employees in or you have vendors in for 1099s. It's just important to keep that updated because eventually you will have information that affects you, such as forms, and then it'll take the update much longer if you wait. So I'm going to say close here. It's that simple, and then it should move me forward into my Atrix software. So it always is going to check and see if there's an update, and it'll prompt you for that. So right now it's gathering the information from Sage 100, and it's going to bring it up into the screen, onto a screen. This is a warning you probably will not get, because probably by the time that you do these, 2021 forms will be available. But it's just telling me that I'm running this for 2020 information, or 2021 information, but I don't have 2021 forms available. So I'm just going to use the 2021 for demo purposes. So I'm just going to say continue. And then it should come up with an Excel-ish kind of spreadsheet where we can go through the information, and I'll show you how that works. It does require a web connection or an internet connection. So obviously most people have that now, but if for some reason your internet was down or something like that, this would not populate. Okay, so I don't want to do my history. So I am going to start over. So I've ran this before, so I'm just going to start over. And it should come right into the screen. So you would not see that because I tested it this morning. That's why I have a copy in there. You would just come to this next screen here. That's popping up. Okay, so you get to this wizard, and this is the first place you go to. And you can say, do you want to test drive the wizard with 25 of your employees? So that would be if you want to do a small run just to check it out. Do you want to test drive the W-2 wizard with all of your employees? So everyone in your employee list. Or you can say, no, thanks, start processing my W-2s. The difference is these test drives don't save a copy. So they don't save a historical copy like that screen that we just saw that popped up prior. It allows you just to test drive them. So you won't be, through the test drive, you won't be prompted to print and file and all of that kind of thing. So I'm going to run through the processing today just so that you see the whole thing. So it's going to pull your federal EIN number from Library Master Main Company Maintenance. So that's important to have. I'll open that up so you can see it. In this version in 2021, the information is not on the main page that Atrix is pulling. It's on a secondary page. I mean, it's pulling the address information from this page, but on the additional tab is where we see the trade name, if we want to use a trade name, and our federal ID and our state ID. So that'll be there. So that's where that's pulling from. So if it's blank, this could be blank, which Atrix would not let you proceed with it being blank. Then it will ask you, do you use multiple payroll data files for this employee identification number? I think the majority of our clients are one EIN per Sage 100 company. So then you would choose no, you use a single payroll data file. The first option allows you to combine companies, data files for companies, just so you know. Pulls in all of this company information that I have listed in company maintenance. If I didn't have this information listed in company maintenance, I could put it in here. So I could just click on a field and start typing it in here. Am I filing for my company employer or am I a third party? So you choose the appropriate option there. And in Atrix, anything that's not correct is going to be highlighted in red. And if you try to go past it, so you'll see that that state tax is highlighted in red. If I try to go past that, it'll actually stop me. So if it doesn't have the information it needs or the appropriate information to print the forms, it will stop you. It won't let you go any further until you correct them, and it'll tell you they're highlighted in red. Even when we get into that spreadsheet, like if addresses were missing, anything like that, it's going to prompt. So it's telling me my tax account number for that state is incorrect. So it looks like I was missing a couple of digits. I'm just going to put this in here. Now keep in mind, I'm putting it in here, but that will not change it in Sage 100. So I would want to note that and go back later and change that in Sage 100. Now you'll see I have nothing in red, so it should allow me to proceed. Data verification, do you have employees who are exempt from Medicare, Social Security, or who are deferring Social Security under the CARES Act? If you do, you would say yes. Now you would say no. Do you have any employees who are members of the clergy? Do you want to use control numbers on your W-2s? If you want to, you can say yes, and it would prompt you for that numbering system. Do you have any employee who elected to only receive W-2 forms electronically? Now it's saying yes, because my employee that I chose does want to get them electronically. So I'm going to say next. Here's the control number. If you have to put a control number in box A, you would put that here, and then you would check what kind of payer you were. And then if you're a specific kind of employer, you can select that there. If you have to have third-party sick pay, which is box B, you can check that, and all of this down here. The only one that's required on this page is the kind of payer. So if I didn't check that, for example, and I click next, it would tell me the kind of payer is required. So it's very easy to run through this wizard because you can't go any further unless you have all the information that Atrix needs. We can truncate our Social Security numbers here. So if we want to truncate them, we can do that. We can truncate with asterisks or with X's, or we can have the full Social Security number. I think most people truncate these days. It's always not good practice to put the Social Security number on a piece of paper that you're going to be mailing or giving to somebody. All right, so once you finish up that wizard, it's actually going to open up a spreadsheet, and I'm hoping that it's going to be happening here any second. I hope I didn't hit cancel or something like that. I'm going to try to go back in there just in case I did hit cancel for any reason. It's a good possibility that I might have, so let me just run through this quickly. It should go quicker now. I'm not going to explain it all. Oh, I didn't. Here it is. So I'm going to cancel that one that I'm doing there. I'm running actually a second instance. I'll cancel that after. But this is what I was looking for to come up. So this is what will come up next. And I just want you to know in this screen, I'm going to see if I can make this like full size on my screen. What I want you to know about this screen is up at the top, it'll tell you what it would like you to do. So verify employee information, and it'll say, and then you can click next step for next step. You can click the next arrow over here. You can click here to go back to the company setup if you needed to. But it'll always tell you to verify the information or some specific information, and then it'll highlight it in the data. So see how all of this is highlighted in blue? That's what Atrix is wanting me to check at this point. If for some reason something was missing, I could change the state here. It's not going to let me delete it. I could, if there was something missing, like I didn't have the employee's state in Sage 100 and this was blank, her record, her line would all be in red, and it would not let me proceed until I filled that in, and it would highlight it in red for you. So you'll always know if you have an issue and if you have to stop somewhere. So I verified everything, social security number, last name, first name, all of that. And I'm going to say next. Now, if you realize you had needed a line 2, you could add it, an apartment number, but just remember anything you add in this interface does not write back to Sage 100, so you'd want to update the employee at that time as well. So I'm going to say next. And you'll notice up at the top that it'll change, and now it says verify additional employee information. So the additional employee information is electronic delivery email address, statutory employee, retirement plan, third-party sick pay. So if I really was sending the electronic W-2, I should have an email address for this employee and employee maintenance. I'm going to uncheck this because I actually want to print them today to show you. So it won't stop me because I've unchecked that checkbox. I'm going to say next. And you'll see it says verify federal information. So now you'll see over on the right-hand side of the screen that it's highlighted in blue. And note there's information in that there's a center screen dividing us. So we're actually on 2 kind of screens, and we can scroll on the bottom through each side to different information. That's how you navigate through there. So I would check all of that information. Yep, that matches my records. That looks good. Remember, if you change it, you'll need to adjust Sage 100 as well. Click next. Verify my state information. So do those wages look correct? Does all of that look correct? And then you just keep going. So it's going to prompt you through this whole process. Verify all other data is basically their last ditch attempt. Is everything okay? Before we go ahead and print those W-2s. I'm going to say next. I feel everything's okay with my employee. Obviously, you would have a long list of employees in that screen, so you'd be looking at more information. It's going to take you here. So Atrix offers free printing of W-2s and all of the appropriate reports you need to file through their program with Sage 100. So as a Sage 100 subscriber, you get free printing of everything. Obviously, they're a business trying to make money as well, and they want to eFile for you or prepare some things for you. So they're going to offer you options as you go through this process. So this is their complete eFile service. It's $245 per employee. Lists all the things it does for you. Next business day printing and mailing. Everything's e-filed. That's their main thing. Just remember though that you can always print them for free. So we're going to say next. And then when you come to this, if you chose the complete e-filing service, you'll see it's $245 per employee with $1.15 for the employee copies, if I wanted that. Now you'll see there is a minimum of $24.95, so it might not be cost effective if you have 1 employee, but if you have 100, $245 may not be a bad deal. And then it'll tell you everything that it's going to do there. It's all included free. So I can play around on this screen to get what I want. So I'm going to say other options instead. So you'll see how that minimum changed to 0. It's no longer charging me for that. And then I can say I'm going to print my employee W-2s. Now I still can e-file, so I could print all my employee stuff, and I can still e-file the W-2s and W-3s with the states and federal government. Or I can uncheck that if I'm going to mail those in also, and then I could just print them right down here. This is a new prompt this year, so it's saying, given the impact of COVID, state agencies have asked taxpayers to submit the returns electronically. So if you feel you need to do that, or you feel it's important to do that, you could e-file them. And you saw how much that was, minimum $24.95, but typically it's only, it's not very much per employee, right? So I'm going to go with the 0 option right now, obviously. If you chose anything that costs money, if you chose to have anything e-filed or had them mailed to the employees, then when you hit next, it would take you to a screen to create an Atrix account and provide credit card information. You'll want to keep that Atrix account information that you set up, the login and password, because in the coming years, you'll be using that again if you want to e-file, etc. Obviously, I said no to all their services, so they're going to come back and say, are you sure that you don't want to use our services? And I'm going to say next. It'll ask you which state you're filing in. So if I had employees in multiple states, they would be listed here and I could choose. And then we'll say next, and we're going to review our data and we're going to print them. So it's a real easy wizard because it doesn't let you cast anywhere that, you know, without everything being correct or the information being complete, I should say. So you'll see that it loads the reports. This is the W-2 for this one particular employee, our demo lady. And you'll see up at the top, this says this is the Michigan W-2. So up at the top in yellow, it'll always tell you what report or form that you're on, and then you can print those from here. Atrix prints all the lines on the blank sheet of paper, but it will ask you to have perforated paper because it's printing 4 up to a page. So you would want 4 perforated paper. You know, the 4 perforations so that you could separate those or an employee could separate those. And then when you're ready to move on, you can say next step here, and it'll say, please insert the 4-part blank perforated W-2 paper you purchased. And then you can say, okay. And I'm not going to print these right now because we're seeing them on the screen, but you could totally, obviously you would print them right there. They would print out to your printer. You could select your printer and it would print out. Once you print those, it moves to the next step. So now it's loading the next thing. So the first one was the Michigan W-2 that I have to submit to Michigan. And the next one is the employee W-2. So you'll see that it's repeating the W-2 4 times for the employee in case the employee needs it. Obviously, you know, a lot of people use tax services now and they don't actually submit their W-2s, but you still can give them the 4 perforated up. So when I say next, it'll say, do you want to print the W-2s now? And it would prompt you to put in that perforated paper. I'm going to say no, since we've seen it. And now we're coming up with the employer W-2. So you see that at the top, and it'll always tell you what report you're on. So we're on report 3 of 7 right now. And there you go. Here's our employee. If we had multiple employees, obviously there would be, if I was printing for multiple employees, they would be all showing up on this page because this is my copy. So I don't need a separate page for each employee. For perforated paper. Now for your copy, if you don't want it for perforated, you just want regular old paper, just print it on regular paper. I'm going to cancel that. We're going to go to the next one. So now we're on report 4 of 7. This is our 941 that's going to be coming up. And there's our 941 tax statement. So this will be our totals. So if I had, oh, this won't be our totals, I'm sorry. This is going to be our each individual that we would then submit to the federal government. We're going to say next. Would you like to print the 940 federal to now? I'm going to say no. And then it's going to load our next report, which is our federal W-3. This is the one that's the summary. So this would summarize all of our employees. Fill that out for you. You'll notice that the employer's contact person comes through, all the information comes through, and you don't really have to fill anything in. So you know to printing that. It's nice now that they all print on blank forms, even if the 4 perforated up. So you know that they'll print appropriately. Everything will be in the appropriate boxes as it looks on your screen. Simplified. Okay, so this needs some further information. So you'll see it says, please complete required red field. So whenever you're required to fill something in before you move forward, it's going to be in red and you'll get a prompt for it. So you'll notice it brought me right to that field. And what it wants to know is, what did I pay any withholding tax in Michigan during the current year? So maybe I paid $200. I can put that in there and then go on to my next step. So it'll tell us this is our final opportunity to review or edit this report, double check it, all of those kinds of things. If you think it's okay, you can just say agree. And I'm not going to print it right now. And now we're at 7 of 7. So 7 of 7 is your W-2 notice. So that's the notice that you would print on the back of the employee's W-2 from the government. So you would obviously either print these separately and send them with your W-2, or if you're savvy enough, I always have trouble with my printer and all of that, getting it to print on the opposite side. I end up printing over it or backwards or something. But if you're savvy and you know how to do that, you could put your W-2s back into your printer, print on the back side of the W-2s, but you can just print them separately and send them with the W-2 separately. If you're having Atrix send them for you, they will obviously print them with the notice and send them to the employees. So I'm going to say no to print W-2 notice now, and I'm done. That's it for my e-filing. It'll ask me if I want to keep this, if I want to keep this in history. So you'll see I printed some before as well. So do I want to, and then I can reprint them. I can e-file them. If I didn't e-file them, I can correct them. So this is where you would make corrections. You would go into W-2 history options, or you can start over, which would clear your past actions and start it over again. I'm going to close this because I'm not going to obviously run another selection, but I do want to go into the federal and state tax reporting for a moment, just to show you one more thing. I'm not going to install the tax update right now, but I chose 1099 in here. There's obviously tons of reporting that you can choose in, or I chose W-2, sorry. There's lots of reporting in here that you may need depending on your specific circumstances. But one thing I wanted to note, this is what I chose, was the W-2s, but I can choose W-2 history, and you'll see over on the right-hand side, it'll say, select this option to correct. So if you needed to correct W-2s, you would use the history option. So when you're done printing all of your W-2s for the year and go through that whole Atrix process, or having the Atrix e-file them or whatever, when you get done with that process, you want to save that historical file at the end on the screen we just saw, so that you can correct them if need be. Hopefully you don't have to. It's kind of a pain, but if you ever had to. So let's switch over to the 1099 side, just so I can show you that. So as of version 2021, and with product updates on supported versions last year, you'll notice that there is an option now for non-employee compensation. So I'm just going to look at a vendor here. I'm going to go to the additional tab in vendor maintenance, and you'll see now that we have the option for non-employee compensation. Last year, the government decided to split out non-employee compensation from their miscellaneous form. So if you have some vendors that are miscellaneous, some that are non-employee compensation, you'll have to print both forms now. So I'm going to go ahead and run through the process quickly of printing the forms for vendors. So and this is located differently under accounts payable. So under accounts payable, on the reports tab, that's where you're going to find form 1099 tax reporting. This also requires that additional install of the Atrix software. So if this doesn't come up, and that is one install for payroll and AP, I should note, but if this doesn't come up for some reason and you're trying to access it, it's likely because that Atrix software is not installed. When we go in here, it'll ask you, what do you want to do? And this is a little different than the payroll, so you'll see I can do a new file or I can do history. So if I have them in history and needed to make a change, I would choose history. I'm going to choose new, and you'll see I have to choose by the form. So I have to actually do 2 Atrix ones if I have miscellaneous and non-employee compensation vendors. So I'm going to choose the non-employee compensation right now because I know I have a couple of vendors in that area. I can choose my 1099 year. We can put in our minimum year-to-date payment for that. So maybe my minimum, I don't know, I think it's around $800 or something. I could put that in there. And then when you put that minimum in there, you don't have to put the minimum in there. When you put the minimum in there, it won't print a 1099 or create it to generate a record for those vendors that fall below that value. Same thing, all of your company information comes in, and you can choose by vendor types what you want to print. So if you wanted to run your individuals from your businesses, you could do that if different people manage them, let's say, or something like that. So I'm going to say accept. It's going to go through the same process, very similar to payroll. It's going to create those work files. It's going to let me know if it has any updates or needs to do any updates. It's going to process those forms. And then you wait while it processes, or you run to the ladies' room while it processes, or get water, something like that, right? This is that warning again. So it's just because the 2021 forms are not available yet from the government, and I'm trying to print these for 2021, so it knows that that's a mismatch. But I'm just going to say continue for our demo purposes. Okay, so same thing as before. I've done these, obviously done this before. I'm going to say start over. Click next. It'll ask me if copies have been distributed. Basically, it's saying if you've already distributed copies, you have to adjust your 1099s. You can't just reprint new. So I'm just going to say no, and it should take us into that little wizard and then the spreadsheet type thing. This is where I got impatient before and thought I closed it by mistake. So it should come up. Here we go. All right. So same thing, test drive or run them. Bring your taxpayer ID in. Same thing, multiple or single data files for this EIN. Bring in all my information from Sage 100. I can populate it if I need to. I'm filing for my company and employer. I don't have any state information here for 1099, so that's good. Do you have any recipients who elected to only receive them electronically? Say no. Do we want the truncation? So however we want that. Would you like to print RINs on recipient copies that are reported as zeros? So I'll say yes to print the zeros. And then it should bring us to that spreadsheet again. And we'll run through this pretty quickly because we went kind of detailed through the payroll one, and this is very, very similar. So here's our vendor 1099 information. Make this bigger. One thing I didn't note before is there is helpful information on the right-hand side. So helpful tips, did you know? Do you want to read more? Those kinds of things. There's also a help button over here. So verify taxpayer identification numbers. So I want to look at these, make sure they're okay. If they are, we're going to say next. Verify the FEIN is checked if the recipient's tax ID number is an FEIN. So federal employee or federal employer number or a federal number rather than a social security number. So that's what this checkbox means. If it's a social security number, this would not be checked. They should come over appropriately from Sage 100. Verify the names and addresses. So does everything look okay there? Verify all income boxes. So over on the right-hand side, does that look right? Is there direct sales of 5,000 or more? You would know if you had to do that, what my filing state is. Filing state is the next step to verify. Verify amount of state income withheld. So, and then that's not common, but if you did, and I'm looking for the blue box here, so I'm gonna move this around. Verify amount of state income and withholdings, I guess is what it's trying to say. I don't know why it didn't highlight it in blue for us. So I'm gonna say that's okay. I looked at all my information, same thing. Atrix wants you to buy it. We don't have to buy it. We can always just print them. So I'm gonna do the same thing I did before. It's gonna give me that COVID warning. I can go through that and still my total should be 0 if I don't want to file anything with them. Second chance, go through Atrix. What are my states? And these are all the forms that are going to print. And then we're going to go into that printing routine like we did previously. And it's going to load all of the reports. And I'm going to do the same thing. And here, I'm going to see it. It's going to show me at the top what it is. This is the federal 1099 non-employee compensation form. It's going to come up here on the screen. And I'm going to go to the next step and print them all the way through. Or, you know, if I opted to eFile, it would be going through the eFile process anyways. You can still print copies for yourself. So you'll see this is my federal 1099. It shows my recipients, ScanCo and SWK. And then I would just walk through this whole process. So due to time, I'm not going to walk through the whole process. If you want to see it, you can let your consultant here at SWK know if you want to see anything in more detail. That's always an option to have a quick session with one of us here and go through it one-on-one. There is one more thing I did want to point out for you guys. And in accounts payable main vendor maintenance, when you go to the 1099 information, you can manage this 1099 information. So let's say you weren't collecting 1099 information prior, you saw this webinar, and now you want to use Sage to print your 1099s. But Sage has not been recording the 1099s. The vendor was not set up as a 1099 vendor. So you would go and set up the vendor as a 1099 vendor, and then going forward, it would collect any invoices that were 1099 related. And when you do an invoice data entry, you can check or uncheck that 1099 box. So like if it was something that you were paying ScanCo, but it was not 1099 related, you can exclude that. So keep that in mind. But there is a 1099 history button on the right-hand side of vendor maintenance, and you can control this by calendar year. So you'll see here that here's my total. And so as long as I have the security rights to do so in Sage 100, I could change this number. So let's say we started collecting this information in June, but they actually had some invoices before that, so their total should be more like 20 something. So I could go in, 2,000 something. I could go in and change that. I meant to do 20,000, but whatever. But you can go in and change that information in there, and that's what we'll forward to Atrix and print on your 1099 information. So that's the way to start using it mid-year if you had to. And just to show you quick in invoice data entry, when you create an invoice for the vendor, I'll show you how you can make it non-1099, which means it won't fall into that 1099 bucket. Just in case you haven't noticed it before, but when I create an invoice for this vendor, it's going to assume that it's a 1099 payment over on the right-hand side at the bottom. I can change this to none, and then this will not flow through to the 1099. So if I was reimbursing an expense or something like that that doesn't need to fall on the 1099, that's how I could record that without having it fall there. Now, if I inadvertently record the invoice as 1099, and it shouldn't be, I could always adjust it like I showed you just a minute ago in vendor maintenance. I know I gave you a lot of information today, but please feel free to reach out to us if you need a one-on-one, if you need to walk through it on your system, if you need the Atrix software installed on your workstation, whatever the case may be, feel free to reach out to myself or your Sage 100 consultant here at SWK. And with that, I'll turn it back to Courtney, and I think we're going to look at some questions if you have any.
Thank you, Monica. We're now going to open it up for questions. If you have any questions, a reminder, please enter them in the questions section of the GoToWebinar. And I'll give that a minute for any more questions to come in. And just a reminder, we do have Monica here, who is a subject matter expert. So this is a great opportunity to have your questions answered in real time. And while those other questions are coming in, Monica, we did have some questions throughout your presentation. The first being, which state ID number appears in the company information field, the UI or the WH number? We live in a state that has an unemployment insurance ID number and a withholding account ID number.
That would be the withholding account ID number.
Okay.
And I believe your unemployment can be set up, and if I don't find this right away, I'll research it and get the information to you. But I think it's also set up in, I want to say tax profile maintenance. No, that's not it. One more try, and then there's a place where we set this up, and if you use it every day, you may know more than me, but I think it now might be this company tax group setup. Where we can set up our accounts for unemployment insurance. I think it is here. And then I can put in on my tax rates here. Oh, there's no place for the ID number. So I'm going to take a look at that and see. You may have to enter oh, here it is right here. I'm sorry. There's your regular tax number and your unemployment tax ID.
Great, thank you. And then also, we have a question about Sage and Atrix. Did they correct the problem with void checks not being included in box 1, 3, and 5 entries?
I don't know the answer to that. I haven't seen that. So, Courtney, would you be able to send me that question, email me that question, and I'll research it?
Yes, I'll send that to you, and we can get back to you guys after the webinar that asked that question.
Perfect.
And then also we have a question about 1099s. Do the 1099 forms need blank forms or pre-printed forms?
The 1099 forms, good question, are the same as payroll. They're blank forms, and you print them.
Great. And I think our last question, unless someone has a last minute one they want to submit, would be, if we use SWK to print 1099s, would we need to order forms from a software company?
Oh, so you mean if you use, I'm thinking they mean if they use Atrix to print the forms. If you have them print them and mail them to the employees, you would not need those forms, because what you would be printing at that point would be your copies, and you could print them on plain paper.
Okay, hopefully that answers your questions. And if you do have any more, just get those in and we can always reach out to you after the webinar. Outside of that, thank you, Monica, so much for a great presentation and for taking the time to be here today. And I'd like to thank everyone for attending our webinar, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.